What is up, Crossfire Nation? Welcome to another edition of MMA Crossfire Live, here from the great fighting city of Toronto, Canada. I am your host, Kenai Andrews, the editor-in-chief of MMA Crossfire. This is the second of our double billing show today. We have another very special guest to talk about a very special documentary that is going to be premiering tomorrow, September 15th, on the Kinema On Demand platform. And it is appropriately entitled SABU. And when I say SABU, Crossfire Nation, you know what I'm talking about. Of course, we had our tribute show earlier this year to commemorate the passing of SABU, who passed away in the month of May. We've also had tribute shows in the past to commemorate the passing of his his girlfriend, the Super Genie, Melissa Coates. And we've also had the brother of the Super Genie, J.R. Coates, on the show several times to talk about these situations. And for those of you keeping score, you also know that the Super Genie was a former columnist here on MMA Crossfire, penning the very popular column called The Super Genie Diary, where she shared a lot of behind the scenes between her and SABU on their various travels around the world, particularly in the country of Japan. And so I am thrilled to have here with me the director of the upcoming documentary called SABU, which takes a look at the personal and professional journey of SABU. Joe Clark is with us here. Joe, thank you so much for coming on short notice here. The documentary is scheduled for tomorrow on the Kinema On Demand platform. Now, I noticed on your social media, you projected that this documentary might take approximately 14,000 years to make. I was just curious, how close were you to coming to that projection?
Well, relatively, it felt like 14,000 years. Like I said, before we started, it's surreal that it's even coming out tomorrow. It doesn't feel real, you know. I've only been in it for about a year and a half now, but that feels like such a longer time, and you know how the way that time stretches, and yeah, it's been a long journey. If it was up to SABU, we would still be going though. The last phone call I had with him, speaking of Japan, he was wanting us to go there for part two. He wanted to go to Japan to have another match there and wanted me to go with him. So if it was up to SABU, we would be getting closer to that 14,000 year mark.
in typical SABU style, of course. So let's start from the beginning here. Can you share with us how this thing came together?
Absolutely. You know, I've always been a huge wrestling mark since I was a kid, and I grew up. I've been obsessed with wrestling forever, and I've also been into filmmaking forever as well. And so naturally, those two, you know, have their cross section. And I remember being as a kid really into Beyond the Mat and Wrestling with Shadows and these, you know, really impactful, which I still think they're some of the best movies ever. And so that I watched those at a formative time, and I always had a dream of making like a really impactful wrestling documentary in that vein. And I made a documentary with Rob Van Dam about 8 years ago called Headstrong, which, you know, that was something I'm really proud of. It was also much more of a collaboration, and it came about much differently than this project, where The impetus was basically Rob hired me to go out on his stand-up comedy tour and film him, and then it takes some twists and turns from there. Whereas the inception of Sabu was much more from we wanted to cover his journey and his story, and also it just so happened he wanted to do one final match, and I knew that doing a documentary on Sabu not only would be incredibly compelling and something that wrestling fans would really appreciate, but being a wrestling fan in my teen years, like I feel there was a good 10-year period where I was hiding that I was a wrestling fan because it was embarrassing because like people, have their stigmas about it.
Yeah.
So I feel like Sabu, this documentary has become a conduit for showing non-wrestling fans the reality of wrestling.
Right. And you mentioned that Sabu passed away during the filming of the documentary. How did that affect the documentary? Did you have to add anything or take anything away or modify anything?
So I also realized I didn't answer your last question, but so about a year and a half ago, RVD and I, so we had made our documentary, and I told him that we both wanted to do a documentary on Sabu, but his gimmick is that he's so closed off. He didn't talk for years and years, so didn't really seem feasible. But when we got together and pitched him the idea, and that's what I told him is I want to make wrestling real and show people the realities of it through his story.
Okay.
He said he wanted to do a last match, and it kind of took a life of its own there where I didn't know when the last match would be, if at all, because he had been wanting to have it for years, and then COVID and injuries and life circumstances were really this obstacle for him, and so we were able to obviously have his last match, which was incredible. And for my personal vision of the film, we only had one scene to go before he passed away, and we were supposed to be filming it literally days the week of. And so it's kind of poetic in that way. And even the ending we originally talked about kind of was a spiritual send-off in its own way. But at the same time, like I said, Sabu, he wanted to go to Japan and keep this train rolling, which I was like, oh, wow, I didn't anticipate that. And so it ended it did have a profound impact on the film, but at the same time, it was also a culmination of his journey. And so that's what makes the project so alluring, is like there's this mystery around it of how his life kind of culminated with the rest of his journey.
Right. Um, and looking at the trailer, I like the way the trailer kind of hinted, teased a few things in there. I noticed that. See if I can actually bring it up here. Like, okay, maybe we can't see it in this shot, but there is I think he's wearing a Super Genie thing around his neck in one of the shots. Can you break down like why, like how you came, or how you like how you were able to come to these particular images for the documentary?
So I actually took this photo while we were filming,
Okay.
and a couple of the all the poster photos are basically while we were filming. We would just like take pictures in cool locations, and so everything is so special about this film because it's like a memento, like
Hmm.
it's just cool to think like we were in the middle of Las Vegas and Sabu's doing his point in the middle of Fremont Street. It's pretty amazing. And Melissa, it's such an interesting. I know her brother JR, and I never met her, but I heard so much about her. I feel like I know her, even though she passed away before we actually got to meet. And
Mm.
so I feel like the film carries that presence and her energy in it. And
Mm.
so she does have a presence of whether it's the lanyard that he wears with her picture. He just carries a lot of grief with her in the film, and in some ways, I'm very influenced by filmmakers like David Lynch, and so he did. he did the TV show Twin Peaks, and that whole
Oh
TV
yeah.
show was about this homecoming queen who she's not actually in the show, but her presence is felt, and that's how I
Yeah.
kind of approached Melissa. Is that I knew she was so important to the story,
Yeah.
but obviously, you know, she's not here with us, but her
Yeah.
presence is felt, and I feel like she kind of provides that almost that heavenly presence for Sabu that I think in some ways foreshadows where he wanted to go.
Right. And in terms of putting this together, like in the editing room and stuff, what was the process or the thinking behind arranging the shots or deciding what footage to include or cut out?
I really enjoyed the production of this movie. You know, like I said before we started, I was going through my own things in life at this time. I just
Hmm.
crashed and burned in Hollywood. I had to move to Vegas. Kind of a rock bottom in terms of professional and personal. And so when I met with Sabu, like we both had chips on our shoulder to prove something that we wanted to make something great. And I know that he wanted to make his last match great, and I wanted to make this film great. And so we met each other halfway, and we really committed. And so a lot of the editing and shooting, I was editing the film before my 9 to 5 every single morning for a good year. And I'm very OCD when it comes to editing. I have easily over 10,000 hours practice, of doing my previous feature films. And
That's
so
Bruce Lee level there, folks.
I love the therapeutic nature. I love it. Some people hate editing. I love it. And so I get so OCD though. I started a new timeline. I think 3 or 4 different times
Mm.
where I literally was like, every single shot needs to serve a purpose, move the story forward, and why is it in this film? And so I was very meticulous, and it helped because I was kind of trapped in this rat race of life, trying to reclaim my life back. And so this was like the surrogate training grounds of editing and shooting this film. And so it's very interesting how we shot it and it came about. And I think that audiences are going to recognize that. This isn't a project where it was like we got together for a week and a half and we got all the footage. Like we were in each other's lives,
So this wasn't the Blair Witch Project then?
No, it was not.
Okay.
I wish that sounds like a good wrestling storyline, though.
Yeah, because I'm very curious because you mentioned 10,000 hours of editing, so you must be very meticulous also about the type of equipment you used. I was just curious, like, did you use conventional software? Or was it a Mac or PC? Like, what was your setup?
I love Premiere Pro, so I use that. I have a Mac. I've been using Mac for a long time,
Okay.
but I remember my first editing software in 7th grade was Pinnacle Studio 7. It was like
Oh no,
$100
I
software
remember
that like
that.
I literally had several mental breakdowns in 7th grade because like the project would crash or something like that.
Oh
But
yeah.
now looking back, I'm happy having going through those experiences because I became so much more proficient, and that's where I kind of like, got my stripes, I guess, if you will. And so, but I will say this is a big evolution in terms of I'm the guy with the Hollywood dreams that wants to make Steven Spielberg big blockbuster action movies. That's what I'm into. And
Mhm.
this was the antithesis of that. Of I literally shot it with just me and my cell phone and Sabu for like 75% of it.
Wow.
So if I would look back now, if this was 5, 10 years ago and I told my younger self
Mm.
that person would be very disappointed to be like, that's not real film, like you got to get a camera, you have to have a crew, you have to have a cast. But the older I get, I realize just how important story is. And I also have experience, filming on cell phones with previous documentary work. And so this was a chance for me to shoot as raw as I could. And I knew that Sabu was perfect for this kind of project because it's a direct reflection of who he was. He was very raw, and
Right.
it kind of has that ECW type vibe, I guess, if you will. Very bare bones, authentic.
Right.
And I think that lends itself, if I had like a big camera and 5 people, at Sabu's house all the time, he'd have been like, dude, get out of here. I don't want you doing this, you know? But that's the beauty of technology, is that I was able to develop that relationship with him that opened up that trust, and we were able to actually get to some very core essence of who he was.
Right. We're here talking on MMA Crossfire Live with director Joe Clark. Here, talking about his upcoming documentary, SABU, which premieres tomorrow, September 15th, on the Kinema On Demand platform. You reminded me, Joe, of Windows Movie Maker when you were describing Pinnacle there. Very similar experiences indeed. Um, so you and then 10,000 um, hours of editing. You know that famous Bruce Lee quote. You fear the person who has trained one kick 10,000 times as opposed to the person who knows 10,000 kinds of kicks, or something like that. But in terms of okay, you worked with Rob previously on other projects, and now you team together to finally put Sabu together. Can you share with us what the collaborative experience was working with Rob? Did he give you full reign, or how did that work?
That's a great question. I love Bruce Lee, by the way, and I love that quote. And yeah, that's the thing, is my editing process and even filmmaking process has pretty much been the same since I was 10 years old, and I'm 37 now. So that's 27 years of throwing the same kick over and over again, you know. But yeah, so, Rob and I, we got super close when we made Headstrong. We're really good friends to this day, very close. And with Headstrong, that was its own saga. That was a 3-year journey from inception to release. And that project was wildly different. I'm very proud of it, of where it is and where it went, but it was much more 50-50. Like, we fought over every single frame of the film. And, I would push him in different ways. He would push me. And we didn't know each other that well, so we were kind of in the trenches. And after you go through that with someone, that process, and the movie actually gets released, and it's gotten good reviews, and people, know about it, which is really, really cool. But at the same time, I'm that selfish dude that wants the creative control. And so before we started Sabu, I did tell him, I said, hey, I'm proud of Headstrong. I would also request that if I'm going to put in the work to make this film, I would like creative control to fulfill my vision of what I have, because I had a very specific vision. And credit to Rob, he was very hands off in that department. Not to say that like I was above critique, because he would give me big picture notes that I agreed with and made for the most truthful, honest, and best movie. And so in that department, like, I have so much respect for Rob for being able to trust me with Sabu's legacy through this film. And I'm pretty astonished, to be honest, from the beginning of this process, that I was able to fulfill, 99% of my vision for this project. I don't think that's ever happened before. And I think it's so hard in films because, film is a collaborative medium, and you should be working with others. And I had plenty of people helping on this for sure. But it was really powerful to be able to have the say on the final cut. That's something I've never had before to this capacity.
Right. It sounds to me like it's one of the important components of putting together a good project. Can you share with us from your experience, what are some of the other hallmarks of being able to put together, something like this?
This was an all-encompassing, all hands on deck. And I think that's why I'm a little nervous about tomorrow. It's because it's not even people's reaction to the film. I've been living with this for so long that, like, it's been such a big part of my life, of literally eating, sleeping, and breathing inside Sabu's world. And so in some ways, I'm like, it's kind of sad, to be not exiting it, but like exiting the trenches by myself and with Rob inside of it. Now it's for the world to have, which is like great. That's awesome.
Mhm.
But it was it was 100% of all of my energy was inside of this project, and that goes from everything from my relationship with Sabu to actually filming, getting things off the ground, editing, working with distributors, and it is a very independent film, and like I said, it works so perfectly with Sabu because he was kind of the king of indies, you know, and so
Yeah,
everything just kind of makes sense with how this one came together.
right. Well, we have a few comments here. Let's run a few comments down here. Uh, Shout out to Vic Martino here with a comment. Very good, interesting podcast here. Can I, this very interesting filmmaker, Joe Clark. And
Sweet.
also, I'm looking forward to seeing this documentary. Uh, yeah, I agree, Vic. And shout out to you, Vic Martino. For those who don't know, Vic Martino uh, is known for playing Muzzy Nardo in the legendary series The Sopranos. So, Joe,
No way.
you got a member of the Sopranos family watching us here. So, shout out to you, Vic Martino. He's in Brooklyn, New York, watching. Um, so,
That's amazing.
so you've got now to kind of piggyback on what Vic was talking about there. You have the scheduled premiere tomorrow on Kinema. Is there a roadmap after that? Is it going to film festivals, for example, after?
There is a roadmap. I don't want to go into too many details, but I
Okay.
will say that eventually it will be going to other places. One cool thing that I'll mention is that next spring we have been talking about with a company about like a special collector's edition DVD, and also something that I'm really excited about is we're working with a VHS company, and we're going to be doing a VHS release of the film as well. So that's something I'm really pumped about.
VHS
And
release. Wow.
yeah, because that was like Sabu was the VHS tape trading king,
Right.
and so that was something I wanted to do that I think, and to be honest, I've actually been asked by a couple people already. I had someone say, "I'll pay you to convert your movie and to make me a VHS tape," so like there is like this weird market for it, and I've seen other people make kind of custom tapes with him, and so it's something I've wanted to do. I think it's as a '90s kid growing up, I think it's gonna make a really cool collector's item. So, um, but you know what? The thing is like it's so surreal that it's premiering tomorrow because I don't know how this is going to be received. It hasn't. No one knows what the movie is yet, and so what I'm hoping for is that the movie comes out, it gains like a really big cult following, and we start to see more screenings and things spread and word of mouth spreads, and more people want to see this movie. That's the dream.
Okay. So what are the details on the premiere? What time is it going to premiere? How can people watch it?
Yeah, I'm assuming it's gonna drop at midnight because it comes out on the 15th.
Okay.
Um, Kinema, it's basically people have asked me like, I don't understand, like, what is it? How do I watch it? Kinema is this really cool new cinema platform for indie filmmakers that have interesting films that you know might not want to hit the big streaming platforms right away. And so I think actually Raven's documentary I heard recently is going to be on there as well.
Okay.
Um, but you just go on the website and you just watch it straight on the website. It's kind of you can watch it on your computer, your cell phone, iPad. You can
Okay.
simulcast it to your TV and stuff like that. So it works like any other streaming service. There is a form of like exclusivity to it, which was intentional because in a weird way, I wanted this film not to be hard to access, but to kind of have the spiritual vibe of how Sabu's career was disseminated. I mean, I remember in junior high, like there was no internet, or there was internet, but there was like no YouTube, cell phones, and so like you
I'm
kind of
with
had to
you.
go underground to find his stuff. And I feel like this film is going to be the same way, where we're releasing it completely independently. We don't have a big machine behind this,
Right.
but I'm hoping that the film's going to be strong enough that people are going to go to the site and say, like, I've been hearing about this movie. It's pretty wild. I want to check it out. And it goes from there.
Yeah, it would be awesome. Like I think the Toronto International Film Festival is just wrapping up now here, And we've had The Rock here with the Smashing Machine, which got a lot of rave reviews. Like, it's getting rave reviews everywhere, obviously, Oscar buzz, etc. And we've also had a Sydney Sweeney's Christie movie here, which profiles the career of famous women's boxing star Christy Martin. Uh, so, in that same vein, it would be awesome to see something like SABU come here, and in that same vein that you're talking about, where it's not simply carbon copied. Anyone can just go see it. There's a certain exclusivity to it, but at the same time, you're getting that premiere showing that a lot of important eyeballs will be there looking at it to get like the exposure that you want.
For sure, yeah. And I hope that, and I believe that a lot of those people will see the film because I
Yeah,
think Sabu himself is undeniable, like I said, I feel like it's kind of a perfect reflection of how his career went, where he could have easily been in, WWE or WCW, throughout the 90s. I know he did like small stints and stuff like that, but he was authentic to himself and he committed to his path, which, took him down almost that cult punk rock underground level. And I'm hoping that this film will ironically kind of get him to that. He's already a legend, but I'm hoping that this will give him a flowers in a cinematic way that he wasn't able to have before.
exactly. Looks like we have a few more questions here from the chat. Looks like John Coates is here. Hey, JR is here
Yeah, yeah.
with a question. Are there film festivals you could submit the documentary to? I would submit TIFF, but any others?
Oh yeah, I'm sure. I've been wary of doing film. I've done the film festival route before.
Hmm.
I'm totally down to do it. I think the film is more than good enough to get into it. I also feel like all of your top film festivals, which I would want this to be at, have gotten so corporate in the last few years, and a lot of
Yeah,
it is just politicized into
right.
how you get into it and whatnot.
Right.
But yeah, I'm totally open to different routes and different premieres that it has because I'm all on board. Like I said, what's cool about Sabu's fan base is they are so passionate, and I think that this film is going to take on a life of its own. It's going to organically get to those big platforms. I don't see any way how this movie just like lands and like goes away for some reason. I feel like it's gonna. I hope it has a big impact for people.
Yeah. Well, it's definitely going to have a huge impact. I mean, as you said, Sabu is undeniable. I especially feel like in Japan, like they catch a whiff of this thing. I mean, that's it. I mean, it's gonna just take over the market. You're gonna have VCR sales going through the roof, or Sony Betamax and everything coming back into style. Um, but
I'm actually going to Japan in December. I did think about it. I was like, that would be cool to find a place over to play it. So I agree. I think it'd be great.
yeah, absolutely. I think that's a home run there. Um, so while we're talking about it, why don't you give us your top 5 favorite Sabu memories in the ring?
Well, number one, I would say was his last match. I mean,
Mm,
to be in person and to have his spirit captured in the way that he was prime 1994 Sabu for 10 minutes there where he was um, at that peak self. I feel like he was at a level of artistry and flow that I don't think that very few people attain. And to see the emotion and the whole buildup and to be near him, for the last year leading up to that match, everything in that match is a buildup from the whole his whole lifetime, really. So that's far and away number one. I watched parts of the match on the broadcast, but doesn't do it justice to be in person. And I do think the film also does it justice as well.
Mm.
And number two, I would say I was really big as a kid in junior high and into Too Cold Scorpio, their match from
Mm.
CyberSlam.
Mm.
The spot where he does the moonsault from the rope to the
Mhm.
outside through the table. I
Yeah.
remember that like bouncing around my head as a kid, and it still does as being the craziest thing had ever seen up until that point, and really going to like dark crevices of the internet to try and find the match. I'm like, I must find this. Where is this match? You know. Same thing with the stretcher match with RVD.
Yeah.
That's definitely a top core memory from junior high, and still all these matches still hold up too, which is awesome.
Yeah.
Obviously, you got to probably put the Terry Funk barbed wire match, which I kind of feel like this last match has the same similar vibe to it of just very emotional, story driven. And obviously, we see the craziness with barbed wire and spots, but the bending of the reality is what stands out, you know?
Mm.
And then number five, probably either one of his big Raw moments where he either jumped off the sign or the leg drop through Cena. I think those are really awesome moments.
Yeah. Yeah. Because being here in Toronto as a wrestling fan, we didn't always get access to things like that. Like ECW was hard to find or hard to watch on TV at the very least. You only get like WWF or at best maybe WCW or NWN on a late Saturday night or something. So to get ECW or to hear about this guy, this Tasmanian, or well, that's uh, 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 but to hear this guy doing all these different things, with the tables and all this stuff, to read about it in the Apter mags and all that, it was quite surreal.
Yeah, that I agree. Like even now when I think back on it, I can't even remember how I stumbled or came across it. It's just like this thing that I just remember. I remember the feeling of, whoa, this is like really outside the box of what I thought wrestling was and pushing that envelope and those boundaries. And at an artistic level, that's really exciting.
Yeah. It really is. Now, do you feel like with Sabu, because we had the discussion with JR and others before, um, like he was, this was a real original thing. What he brought was really original. And unfortunately, when you bring something original to professional wrestling, what's the first thing that happens? Like everyone tries to take a slice of it. And I think a lot of people took a lot of the Sabu character, a lot out of Sabu, and it really didn't leave much for him. He couldn't go, he couldn't reap the benefits of all that originality, all the thinking that he had to do to put everything together. What do you feel about that?
Yeah, I think it's kind of a tragic tale of an amazing artist. And I feel like we've seen that story in history where someone doesn't get their due until they're gone, And that a deep theme for the film is that it's mentioned explicitly by several prominent members of the wrestling community that Sabu never got his flowers. And so it's this surreal journey of him going to his last match and hearing that feedback of, you know, you didn't get the money you should have, you didn't get the spotlight you should have, you didn't get this, you didn't get that, and in some ways, I feel like it kind of like fed into itself into a self-prophesizing way, almost like it, like at a certain point, he might have like started that became the story and he might have become handcuffed to that story in some ways, of like, oh well, yeah, like, someone like Sabu like didn't get the money they should have, or like, and that's tough. That's a really really tough thing to overcome, especially if you're an original, like I feel
Yeah.
like that part is like we've seen that in culture and entertainment before where someone very original comes in and then Hollywood or the music industry or whoever comes in and takes that originality and then throws them to the side, right?
Yeah.
So that's kind of what happened to him in some ways.
Mm,
Um, and I hope, but I also feel like that was his motivation for this match.
mm.
Was he was still going to commit to what he did because it wasn't about those other things as well.
Right. All right. We have some more comments here. Uh, JR says, Sabu always said that they treated him like Elvis when he was in Japan. Yeah, I agree. I see some of those pictures there. He looked like he was really living La Vida Loca there.
Well, I heard a really cool story from one of the wrestlers, Judge Dredd, that he was trained with the original Sheik, and he said the Judge Dredd when he went over to Japan, I think in the early '90s at some point with Sabu, he was visiting Sabu. I think he was going to do a match, and
Mm,
he said he walked into a video store. It was like a Japanese Blockbuster, and you remember on those they would have like all the different DVDs of a movie that just came out. Well, they had that, but instead of the movie, it was Sabu's latest match. And he
oh
said he
wow.
remembers seeing on the wall, like, 50 VHS copies of his last match and thinking, like, that was when it first clicked for Judge Dredd. He was like, oh, shit, dude. Like, what are you doing over here? You're really clicking.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. It's really well. I mean, yeah, I agree. It really is amazing to see how passionate they are about Sabu over there in Japan. Um, they really do love him, um, and it's great to see. So I'm really that's one of the reasons why I'm really glad that this documentary is coming out, so that more people can get a chance to see what made this guy so interesting to a lot of us here, not just in professional wrestling. I should also say here in the MMA community, they know of Sabu. In fact, there was a, let me tell you this, Joe, like this MMA fighter in New Jersey who was interested in coming on the show. He knew everything about Sabu, uh, kind of like well, like a Japanese fan. And the stigma is that you're MMA, you don't you're not supposed to know anything about wrestling. You're not supposed to like wrestling. But this guy was he had dates, he had times, he had he had photos if I dared to ask him. So this is a very serious business, and I guess it leads me to another question. Was there any pressure? Uh, did you feel any pressure knowing that you were doing a film on such a noted a wrestler, like you didn't want to screw anything up. You wanted to make sure everything came out perfect.
That's another great question. I am, you know, it's one of those things where I'm definitely really nervous for because of how passionate his fan base is, how they're going to respond to it. Because the film gets very raw and isn't this fluff piece that some people might think it is because RVD is attached to it as a producer. I think what you said that really resonated with me was we're going to find out more about what makes this human being so interesting. And
Mm,
that I think is the key of I hope that people respect the authenticity of the film, even if it makes me nervous, because this isn't like a glossy WWE product that's like, look how amazing this person is. It's a very real, three-dimensional, depth-filled portrait of a man, and along with that are certain shadows and insecurities and different things that, although might be jarring and might make fans of be I don't want them to be disappointed in the film or in me when they see that, but I hope that they respect the authenticity because I think that when you say what made Sabu so interesting in the ring, I think it's a direct reflection of who he was outside of the ring. And those two entities were pushing on one another, and I wanted to go into both sides equally, and the way that I calm myself down from those insecurities of people that might be let down by the film. It's more of I think that if you're a person that's doing barbed wire matches and you're known for having scars around your body, you're probably living a more unique lifestyle than the rest of us. You know what I mean? And
Yeah.
so, I'm both anxious, excited, and uncertain. I don't know how people are going to respond to this. However, I will say that even with that insecurity that I think comes on with every creator, the feedback I've been getting is that people think it's an amazing film. Like, only a handful of folks have seen it, but I was nervous to show Rob the film, and I prefaced to him and Katie when I showed him, like, this movie's like pretty crazy, and I know you guys are like brothers. And he watched it, and he knew that was a truthful representation of who Sabu was. So, it's an intense, depth-filled film that I think it's going to kind of do what the original mission was show Sabu as a real person, and that wrestling isn't just this fake thing that people don't understand. It's actually something much deeper than that.
Absolutely, an art form. Um, well, it really is interesting to hear your thoughts on the documentary. For those of you just joining us, you're here watching MMA Crossfire live. We have director Joe Clark talking about his upcoming movie documentary Sabu, which premieres tomorrow, September 15th, on the Kinema On Demand platform. Joe, thank you so much for sharing your thoughts. We're almost out of time here. Is there anything else that you'd like the fans to know about Sabu, the documentary, before the premiere?
We're here. We've made it. We're ready. I don't really know what to expect. Like I said, I hope that the ride continues. I don't want the film to just come out and then
Yeah.
no one sees it. Like I want it to be a firestorm. I want it to
Yeah.
blow up. I want people to spread the film similar to how they spread his matches in his career. I wanted to have that similar ride feeling to it, where it's like, holy cow, this is nuts. You got to check this out. You got to watch this movie. And Sabu was so truthful and honest and authentic. That comes across on the screen. And so I can't wait for people to see it. It's like I said, it's here, it's now, and let's buckle up. Hold my hand.
Exactly. And for those of you aspiring, do not use Pinnacle 7 or any of those older software for
Vegas Studio or something.
There you go. There you go. Well, we'll leave it there. Thank you so much, Joe, for coming on and sharing that with us. Again, Sabu, the documentary, premieres tomorrow, September 15th. So go over to the Kinema online platform and check it out. I really await to see where this ride goes, because I really do feel it's gonna go way past Kinema. It's gonna be at some kind of festival. We'll bring you back in from Japan or something, and
I would love that
at some kind of
Let's put it out
VHS
in the
party.
universe.
Okay, well, let me hold you to that. So when you get the book for Japan,
There we
we'll
go.
set it up.
Making moves. I love it.
All right. Well, this is going to do it for this edition of MMA Crossfire Live. Again, thank you so much for coming on, Joe. We do this every Sunday at 7 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. But we are out. So for Joe, thank you so much for watching Crossfire Nation. We'll see you next Sunday. Take care, everyone.